So let's jump right into the McNeese State game, and let's talk about Alabama's 8-point win over the Cowboys. So Alabama wins, as I said, by 8 over McNeese State, and this was Will Wade's return to Coleman Coliseum. There obviously were some FBI chants by some of the students. There was another student that had a black T-shirt on with the FBI lettering on. I know Will Wade, even gave him a little bit of a thumbs up after one of them. Fully expected all that. And, something we didn't talk about in the preview was that this was Will Wade's 9th time playing Nate Oates. And the reason that's really important is Nate Oates' system is very difficult to prepare for in a short period of time, which is why he honestly does fairly well in tournaments, especially like that second round of a tournament if he gets past the first round when you're on a short day's notice. But his system is something that if you played him a bunch of times, you have a little bit better of an idea of what works and what doesn't work. And something that Will Wade did in this game that did work decently well against Alabama is he mixed up his defenses. And he mixed up his defenses a lot. And Alabama's inability to A, get in front of the defender that was in front of them, or B, move the ball, right? Nate Oates talked in the Arkansas State game about how Alabama wasn't moving the ball enough. This game, you saw more of that. There was a lot of standing around. There was a lot of two guys in the same corner. There were just some things where clearly Alabama's players had not played with each other a ton, and there were some mental lapses that came with that. I think that part of this has to do with the fact that you have all the incoming freshmen, incoming transfers, and then two of your players that had played in Nate Oates' system and were going to be key contributors this season, in Grant Nelson and Latrell Wrightsell, both are missing for portions of the summer as well as both scrimmages, right? So this is a situation where the players that had not played for Nate Oates obviously didn't have any experience to go with, and then the players that had played for Nate Oates in Grant Nelson and Latrell Wrightsell, the two of them both were not able to contribute a ton over the summer. Grant Nelson a little bit more than Wrightsell, but obviously toward the end, Wrightsell's not able to contribute nor play in the exhibitions. And this just sees some level of discombobulation, some level of mistakes that happen as related to that. Like there was a moment that Grant Nelson went to throw a pass and Jaron Stevenson had just cut along the baseline, and he should have been in the corner. Grant, thought off of that play he should be in the corner. He throws to what should have been a wide open Jaron, and Jaron's not in the corner, right? So even in players that have played with each other, due to them having not played with each other a ton here recently, you could just tell some lapses that came with that. I will say, however, Grant Nelson was a huge key to this game for Alabama, right? In the first half, Grant Nelson is really the only reason why Alabama was able to sustain the fairly quick start that McNeese State got. McNeese State gets a pretty quick start, jumps out to a lead on Alabama, and Grant Nelson just about single-handedly keeps Alabama in this game. At one point, Grant Nelson, I believe, has 14, and McNeese had 16. And Grant, was just a hot hand. He did miss a couple of threes to start the game, but then hits the next two that he takes. Does a really, really good job, using his body and, and kind of imposing his will down low. Obviously, he's a really tough physical guy. Has played a lot of college basketball. He ends up with 4 offensive rebounds. Has 3 assists as well. But he was just a huge focal point for what Alabama needed to do and had to do early in this game until the shooting kind of started up and really got going. What you did see that was a good thing to see is you saw Mark Sears and Latrell Wrightsell both shoot the ball pretty well. Mark Sears goes 3 of 5 from 3. Latrell Wrightsell goes 5 of 9. That's really good given that Mark went 0 of 5 and Latrell went 1 of 9 last game. So that's, 7 more makes than they had made on the exact same number of attempts this game. Obviously, you love to see that. I had personally, in my pregame thread, had written Latrell Wrightsell as the player to watch. I fully expected him to have a pretty good game in this one. I knew that he was not going to go 1 of 9 from 3 again. He's just too good of a shooter, and Nate wants him taking those shots. Similar to Latrell Wrightsell, somebody that I expected to have a pretty good game, and it just wasn't his shooting night, was Aiden Holloway. And I wanted to mention it because I know a lot of Auburn fans have just gone crazy of, oh, Aiden shot 0 of 5, 0 of 5. Jaron Stevenson did the same thing, right? This isn't a situation where I would consider this an indictment on Aiden or Jaron. It's just, it happens, right? With Aiden, I think he was putting a little bit too much on it. Most of his shots were hitting the back rim, and I think it was just kind of a distance control thing. It wasn't like he was too far left or right on any of the shots. It was purely a distance thing, and sometimes that happens, right? I will say Nate was pretty upset with Aiden at moments in this game because he was passing up open shots. I'm sure Aiden, in his mind, thinks of it as, hey, I don't need to take that shot. I've missed too many in a row. That's not how Nate Oates plays, right? If you're a top shooter and Nate knows based off of practices and live game competition what type of shooter you are, he wants you taking the shots that are good, right? There was a moment that I know that Aiden was in the corner. He passed up the open shot, and Nate immediately goes to the bench, pulls him, but even before they pulled him, Nate had Preston, kind of yelling at him while he was still on the floor, like, hey, you can't pass that shot up, right? This is something that Latrell struggled with at moments last season, where Latrell was so used to opposing, his coach not wanting him to, either take that many threes or whatever. And that's just not how Nate Oates plays basketball, right? I don't care what the shot clock is. If you're open and you're a good shooter, take the shot. And so it will be something that I'm sure Aiden will get better at through the course of the season. Again, we saw it happen with Latrell last year. I would look at the path that they're on from a shooting perspective very similarly. They're going to have to get used to, hey, don't pass it up. Nate wants you to shoot it. It's completely okay, right? So that is one thing I would mention. The shooting numbers were not quite as high from a three-point perspective as I expected they would be. They only get off 34 attempts, which I know is a lot. But against a Will Wade coach team, that was a little lower than I expected, honestly. And I think part of that was due to the fact that Aiden, Jaron, and LeBaron Philon all went 0 for. Aiden and Jaron both went 0 for 5, and then LeBaron goes 0 for 2, right? So that, I think that has a big piece to do with why there maybe weren't as many threes being taken. The only ones that were consistently making shots were Grant, Mark, and Latrell. Obviously, part of that is going to be impacted when you get Chris Youngblood back in December, but obviously for this game, I think that may have had a piece to do with it. The guys that were missing shots, I think, were a little bit more timid, and the offense just didn't get into the flow of the offense that we wanted to see. You didn't have the running in transition at the level you wanted. You didn't have those rhythm threes that Alabama and Nate Oates, his offense is kind of predicated on, where you step into the shot and you just know it's going in. Those are the shots that I really expect to see out of a Nate Oates team, and we just didn't see a lot of it due to lack of ball movement, lack of movement overall, and just positive defense from McNeese State, right? Want to give them credit. Will Wade knows how to coach defense. Wade knows how to defend Nate Oates, and his players did a good job, right? Need to give them credit that at the end of the day, the reason why Nate Oates schedules Brian Hodgson and Will Wade with Arkansas State and McNeese is because he wants to challenge his team. He could have went for just bye games against easy teams, but then does he know anything about his players? No, right? But instead, he schedules Arkansas State and McNeese, both of which challenge his team in ways that other teams would not have. And now you know a little bit more about your team going into what's going to be an absolute gauntlet for the rest of November and beginning of December. It's going to be something that's going to be very invaluable as you go on throughout the season, because if you never test yourself in the non-conference or in these super early non-conference games, you just don't know what you have. And then when you go to play somebody that does know what they have, it's just a much different contest, right? So this Purdue game is going to be something that Alabama will be better for, having played McNeese and Arkansas State. I wouldn't think too much into the 8-point and 9-point wins over these games. They won the games. Again, It is what it is. I wouldn't worry too much about it. At the end of the day, you play the games to win, and it doesn't matter if you win by 5 or 50. You won the game. So completely fine with what happened. Don't want Alabama fans to freak out due to the fact that you see a smaller win than you may have anticipated. It's okay, right? So want to move over to the Purdue game and talk about the game that's going to be happening in Mackey Arena.